My name is Ankur Patel. I'm the Director of Advancement for Hindu University of America, and our special guest today is Dr. Shriram Sarvatham on the Yoga of the Yoga Sutras. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are zooming in from. I see Shantaji is from Montreal, Bear, Pittsburgh, Dipanshuji from Plano, Texas, Orlando, Florida, Anil Agarwal from India, Toronto, Simi Valley. I'm in Chatsworth. I'm very close to you. Fairfax, very cool, very cool. Thank you for joining us all today for this webinar on the Yoga Sutras. You know, there's so much going on in the field of yoga, and it's always nice to have Shriramji ground us, which he does so well. You know, he's got this temperament. I think about 60 of us on here probably know you already. You know, we appreciate what you bring, but if you don't, let me give him a quick introduction. Just let me have that right here. And Dr. Shriram Sarvatham has been an ardent practitioner of yoga since childhood, and we are trying to get more people into yoga from our perspective. He was actually initiated into yoga by his teacher, Yogacharya R. Subramanian, from India, right? He studied with him for 14 years, and he's been teaching yoga since 1991 in India and now in the United States through Hindu University of America through this technology. He's taught 300 yoga workshops and retreats all over. He's a founding member of the Ekashri Schools of Yoga. He's a faculty member of the teacher training program of Yoga Bharati. One of our partners in the University of America is an institution for Hindus to come together, build, grow, and we're happy to partner with organizations like Yoga Bharati, with distinguished people like Dr. Shriram Sarvatham, who I had the pleasure of having for a holistic yoga course. I think you had some guest lectures in that. But let me hand it off to Dr. Shriram Sarvatham to get us started on the Yoga of the Yoga Sutras. We also got a course on this, so please stay. Obviously, we've changed the designation a little bit. We're calling this the open house, but in the same way, you have the opportunity to interact. You can put it in the Q&A box if you want to ask Shriramji a question. And then Shriramji's got his presentation, and we'll let you know about the course. And off to you, Dr. Shriramji.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ankurji, for the kind introduction. And thank you all for joining this afternoon for an overview on the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So this is a topic that is very dear to my heart because this text, Patanjali's teachings on the Yoga Sutras, is the foundation for all the practices that we do in the name of yoga. Most people's first introduction to yoga is perhaps through the way of asanas, through the practice of body postures and perhaps pranayama, breath work, and so forth. And when we experience the benefits of yoga, we realize that yoga is deeper than what we see in the surface level. In other words, yoga is much more than the postures that we see in yoga studios, and perhaps most of the yoga books that we see today. When we open a page at random, perhaps we see pictures of yoga postures. But we are led to discover sooner or later that the practice of asanas and the practice of pranayama, etc., is a very thin slice of the very broad spectrum of yoga. So what is yoga and what are the different practices associated with yoga and what are the deeper dimensions to yoga? That is what this text talks about. Patanjali has clarified that what is yoga. He has made a very clear presentation about the basic tenets of yoga and the yoga philosophy. Now, even if we are just a practitioner of asanas, and perhaps we may not be interested to learn about the theory behind yoga, it will still benefit you. Knowing about the contents of the Yoga Sutras will still benefit you because we will understand the role of asanas, the role of the postures, the role of breath work, the role of meditation, so that we use these practices in a very powerful way, in a very intelligent way. And that is where Patanjali brings so much clarity on this topic. So here is the plan for today. I have made a short presentation and I will walk you through this presentation, which gives an overview of what is there in the Yoga Sutras. How many sutras are there? What are the different topics that Patanjali covers in the Yoga Sutras? What are the different abhyasas or practices that he gives in the Yoga Sutras? And how can we benefit by this teaching in a very practical way? And how to profoundly enhance our own yoga practice. Perhaps some of you already have a yoga practice that you do every day, perhaps inside the yoga mat, and how we can use these teachings in a very powerful way. And of course, if we want to do a deep dive on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, I would welcome you to the course that we are offering in the next semester, in the winter 2022 semester, where we will go through these topics in much more detail. So allow me to begin with a very short invocation chant on Maharishi Patanjali. Om Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacham Malam Sharirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopakarottam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjaliranatosmi Abahu Purushakaram Shankhachakrasidharinam Sahasrashirasam Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim. So once again, for those of us who have just joined, I welcome you all in this webinar. And I'm going to present a short overview of what do we see in the Yoga Sutras and how the teachings of the Yoga Sutras can benefit us both inside the yoga mat as well as in our day-to-day life outside the yoga mat. So let us jump right in. I'm going to share my slides. Okay. So when we begin the inquiry in Yoga Sutras, when we begin the study of the Yoga Sutras, students often discover that what they thought of about yoga is a very completely mistaken notion. In other words, most people associate yoga with postures, but then Patanjali leads us into the deeper dimensions of yoga, where asanas is just a very small part of yoga. So what is the Yoga Sutras? What are the contents of the Yoga Sutras? So let us understand first by inquiring what is sutra, because Patanjali presents the teachings of yoga in the form of sutras. So what are sutras? So there's a definition.
Ramji, if you hit the play button, it might go to full screen.
Let me do that, yes.
Yeah.
So I hope the full screen is visible.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you. And thank you for walking us through this. I know people are always asking for this. This is great.
So what is a sutra? Now, before we jump into this definition that you see here, I'd like to mention the literal translation of the word sutra. The literal meaning of the word sutra is a thread of knowledge. In fact, the English word suture and the Sanskrit word sutra, they come from the same root. So little thread of knowledge. And Patanjali, so when he presents the topic of yoga in the form of sutras, so what he does is he weaves a fabric. He connects so many ideas in the way of sutras, in the way of these threads of knowledge, and they interweave together to create a very beautiful fabric of yoga. So that is how we can understand what this is about. Now, in order for a text to qualify as a sutra, it needs to pass these 6 attributes. In other words, a sutra form of writing needs to adhere to these 6 attributes. So what are they? That's what is mentioned here in this shloka. Alpaksharam asandigdam saravat vishwato mukham astobham anavadyam cha sutram sutra vido viduhu. So what it means is, a sutra form of writing should first have alpaksharam. Akshara means letters, alphabets. So alpa aksharam literally means few letters or few words. Alpaksharam means the knowledge should be presented in very few words. In fact, if we examine the sutras that Patanjali presents, most of the sutras are not even complete sentences. Many sutras do not even have a verb in them. They're just a collection of nouns. They're not even complete sentences. We can think of them as bullet points. For example, when somebody makes a PowerPoint presentation, perhaps each of the bullet points are not complete sentences. So it is just a cue for an aid in the memory, and we can expand the teaching by giving more words to it. But the point is, the sutras compress the teachings in a very small way, very few words. So that is the first attribute, alpaksharam. The second attribute is it should be unambiguous, asandigdam. Asandigdam means when 2 people read the Yoga Sutra, they should come to the same conclusion. It is like reading a scientific text. So when you read, for example, the 3 laws of Newton, in fact, the 3 laws of Newton can be thought of as sutras, the 3 sutras, right? Because each of the statements, they should be very clear about their meaning. It is not like a poem that lends itself to multiple interpretations, you see. So the sutras should be very clear, very precise, very scientific. And the third attribute of a sutra is it should capture the essence of it. So alpaksharam asandigdam saravat. Sara means the essence. It should contain the essence, the heart of that subject. The heart of yoga is presented in the Yoga Sutras. It is not just conveying the periphery of the subject, but it goes to the heart and soul of that subject, the essence of that subject, saravat. And then vishwato mukham. Vishwato mukham means it gives a complete picture of that subject. All aspects of the subject should be covered in that treatise. It is not a partial text. It is a complete text on yoga. The fourth attribute is astobham. Astobham means there are no filler words and there are no superfluous words. For example, when we read a shloka, sometimes there are filler words that you see in a shloka form of writing because the shlokas should adhere to a certain meter. In Sanskrit, they are called chandas, like Anushtup Chanda, Trishtup Chanda, and so forth, in order to fill the metric form of poetic writing. There are some filler words that may be used, but a sutra form of writing will be devoid of that. There will be no stoba. Stobas are the filler words. So it is astobam, no filler words. And then the last attribute of sutra form of writing is anavadyam. Anavadyam means it contains truth. It cannot be disproved. We can think of these as axioms. So in the mathematics or in sciences, when we talk about the fundamental axioms of that subject, they cannot be disproved. So the sutra form of writing contain irrefutable truth, irrefutable logic. So these are the 6 attributes of sutra form of writing. And there are many texts that are given in sutra form. Patanjali Yoga Sutras, of course, is one very famous example of sutras. And then we also have Narada Bhakti Sutras. And then we have Ashtadhyayi, Panini's great work on the Sanskrit grammar. So there are many presentations that are in the sutra form of writing, or Brahma Sutras, which is the foundational text on Vedanta and so forth. Now, when we look at Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, what does it contain? How many sutras are there? What are the different chapters and how has Patanjali organized the knowledge of yoga in the Yoga Sutras. That's what we will see in the next slide. So the Patanjali Yoga Sutras contain a little less than 200 sutras. Most of the versions of the Yoga Sutras, you will find 195 verses. There are some versions that give an additional 1 or 2 sutras that you won't find in all texts. But we can say a little less than 200 sutras to capture the essence of yoga. So in this sense, the Yoga Sutras is a relatively short text. If you were to chant all these 195 sutras, you can do it in little less than 20 minutes. So the entirety of yoga, the essence of yoga, we can capture it in a capsule of 20 minutes of knowledge, you see. So that is the great contribution that Patanjali has done in the field of yoga. So yoga existed even before Patanjali's time. You will see references to yoga in Rig Veda. So it is much older than Patanjali. What Patanjali has done, the genius of Patanjali is he has captured the essence of yoga and he has presented it in the most essential form. In these 195 sutras, he has captured the heart of yoga. So these 195 sutras are organized into 4 chapters. There are 4 chapters in the Yoga Sutras, starting with the Samadhi Pada, the chapter on Samadhi. And the second one is Sadhana Pada, which is the chapter on practices. Third is Vibhuti Pada, which is the chapter on powers, extraordinary powers that come as a result of practicing yoga. And the 4th chapter is called Kaivalya Pada, which is the chapter on liberation or freedom. You will notice the very first chapter begins with the topic of Samadhi. People usually think that Samadhi is one of the final objectives of yoga, but Patanjali begins the subject of yoga with Samadhi, which is very interesting because Patanjali starts with the goal first. What is the ultimate objective? And just like somebody who is giving a sales pitch about a subject, so they want to give the sadhaka, the practitioner of yoga, the end goal, so that it is always in our mind. The end goal of yoga is always vivid in our mind. Now, when we look at these 195 sutras, very few of them talk about yoga postures or asanas. In fact, only 3 of them, only 3 sutras talk about asanas. And only 6 sutras talk about pranayama. So what do the remainder of the Yoga Sutras contain? So in fact, that is the topic of our inquiry. When we do the course, we will go through a systematic study of the Yoga Sutra. So what does the Yoga Sutra contain apart from asanas, pranayama, etc.? So in order to give an overview about the contents of the Yoga Sutras, let me invite you to the first few sutras. How does Patanjali begin the Yoga Sutras? And then how does it branch out into various practices, the various Abhyasas that he presents? So let us begin with the very first sutra. The first sutra of Patanjali is Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Atha Yoga Anushasanam. The word shasanam means rules or regulations. It is the discipline that Patanjali talks about here. In other words, we go through a regimen of discipline. That is what shasanam means. And the word anushasanam, so there's a prefix here. It is not just rules or discipline, it is anushasanam. The word anu means it is a self-inspired discipline. You see, in other words, we willingly do these practices of yoga. It is not that somebody has dragged us into the yoga class and against our will, we are doing the practice of yoga. It's not like that at all. So Anushasanam means it is a self-discipline. We are willingly doing the practice of yoga because we see the benefits, we see the growth that it brings to us. It brings better health. The practices of yoga brings clarity of mind. And we are going to see in a few moments what is the ultimate objective of yoga, the state of yoga. How does Patanjali define it? We will see that in a moment. So Patanjali introduces yoga as a self-discipline. This is very interesting because the goal of yoga is kaivalya. Kaivalya means freedom, freedom or liberation. Whereas Patanjali starts out by saying you need discipline, which seems to be paradoxical, right? Go through discipline in order to achieve freedom. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. In Bhagavad Gita, in fact, much of the teachings of the Yoga Sutras, you can find the seeds of thought in the Bhagavad Gita as well. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a very interesting verse that talks about the nature of happiness. What is the nature of sattvic happiness or the highest happiness? And Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Yatta dagre vishamiva pariname amrutopamam tatsukam sattvikam proktam atma buddhi prasadajam. That means that happiness that you receive by going through a short-term discomfort is truly the highest happiness. You see, the highest happiness is one which is experienced after going through a short-term discomfort. For example, when we do some form of exercise every day, at the end of it, we feel very good, right? The opposite of that is a lower type of happiness. In other words, for example, if we indulge in, say, eating junk food, you see, in the moment, it feels very good. But later on, it gives some complicated results, right? Perhaps a tummy ache. We don't feel good at the end of it. So true happiness or the highest happiness is one that is gained by going through some discomfort in the beginning. Now, later on, Patanjali also says that if you're already happy, if you're already in the state of kaivalya, you don't need the discipline. You're already there. You have achieved the state that we are all seeking for. But when that is not so, when we are not in that, then it helps to go through this discipline in order to gain the highest happiness. In fact, even the word gain is a misnomer because we will see in the Yoga Sutras that the happiness that we are seeking is with us already. It is just that we have forgotten. We are playing a little hide and seek to find out where our happiness is. We have lost track of it now, and we are just trying to remember where it is. It is within us. So this is the first sutra. Patanjali describes yoga as a self-discipline, and then he goes on to define what is yoga. This is perhaps one of the most famous sutras of Patanjali. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Here he defines what yoga is. Yoga is the silencing of the mental chatter or the mental agitations. We can think of yoga as the transformation of the mind from turbulence to tranquility. The transformation of the mind from turbulence to tranquility. So that is a very short interpretation of this sutra. In fact, commentators, great scholars who have given commentary on this sutra, they delve into much greater detail, and we will see some of that during the course. For example, the word chitta, here we are translating as the mind, but there is more to the story. So the words chitta and then the word vritti and the word nirodha, they're all technical terms, and we will go deep into what they truly mean so that we do a deep dive to understand this more thoroughly during the course. But for our the purpose for today, we can understand yoga as the transformation of the mind from a agitated or a mind filled with chatter to a mind that is tranquil, silencing the agitated state of mind. And why is this useful? It is useful because a lot of times we dissipate precious energy, precious prana by unnecessary thoughts, right? Our mind is filled most of the time with a traffic of thoughts. There is so much turbulence in the mind. In fact, Arjuna says that in the Bhagavad Gita, Chanchalam hi manah Krishna pramadi balavadridam, he says. That means my mind is so filled with thoughts all the time. Thoughts are moving in the mind all the time. I don't know how I can silence the mind, he says. So when we examine the thoughts that flow in our mind, what we discover is most of the thoughts are not high quality Nobel Prize winning thoughts, right? You'll agree with me. Most of the thoughts are mundane or trivial thoughts. That means we are wasting the precious resource of prana on unnecessary things. It is like a millionaire. They spend all their money on trinkets, on useless things, and they're still not very happy, you see. So what Patanjali says is, in the state of yoga, we conserve this energy because we are allowing the mind to be tranquil. We are not unnecessarily expending this energy, and the same energy goes to uplift the quality of our awareness. Our mind is more alert, our mind is more bright. He uses the word jyotishmati. The mind becomes more luminous, and with this luminous state of mind, we can see things that were not visible before. In other words, our mind becomes highly creative. Our mind has the potential of intuition. Mind can tap into intuitive thought. So we are awakening some of the dormant powers of the mind that we did not have access to before. That is the benefit of conserving this energy of prana, so that we don't unnecessarily spend it on useless thoughts. You see? So this is chitta vritti nirodha. It is the state of bliss where the mind is so tranquil, and from this tranquil state, we are able to awaken the higher powers of the mind. Now, how is this achieved? How is the chitta vritti nirodha, the silencing of the mental chatter? How is this achieved? And Patanjali gives two things to keep in mind, the two fundamental aspects of yoga. They are Abhyasa and vairagya. He says, Abhyasa vairagyabhyam tannirodha. Again, he echoes the teachings that we find in the Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna says the same thing in response to Arjuna's question about, oh, my mind is so filled with chatter all the time. How can I silence my mind? Arjuna asks this question. And in response to that, Lord Krishna says, Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. With the practice of Abhyasa and vairagya, the mind can be silenced. So what is Abhyasa and vairagya? Abhyasa means practice. In fact, we're going to see the technical definition that Patanjali gives. What is Abhyasa? In the next slide, we will see that. So Abhyasa means practice, and vairagya means having patience or being dispassionate, not being in a hurry to reach the goal. Being patient, being centered, that is vairagya. So these two are the fundamental basis of yoga sadhana, Abhyasa and vairagya. And Patanjali describes both of these in great detail. So let us look at the Abhyasa part of it. What are the practices that Patanjali gives to silence the mind, to make the chitta vritti nirodha happen? So what is Abhyasa? He defines Abhyasa as tatra sthitau yatnaha abhyasaha. Tatra sthitau yatno bhyasaha. All the methods that we use, all the devices that we use, all the strategies that we use, all the practices that we do in order to silence the mind is called Abhyasa. You see, anything that we do, either inside the yoga mat or outside the yoga mat, for example, not eating junk food, eating nutritious food, that is also an Abhyasa, you see, because that will help to bring a silent mind. Otherwise, eating junk food might dull the mind. So whatever we do, inside or outside the yoga mat, that helps us in this objective of silencing the mind to a place of tranquility, this is called Abhyasa. This is how Patanjali defines Abhyasa. And he talks about three streams of Abhyasas in order to achieve this tranquil state of mind. So much of the first and second chapters of the Yoga Sutras concerns itself with abhyasas or practices. And Patanjali gives three broad streams of abhyasas. So the first stream is actually for adept yogis. Adept yogis, people who can control their mind. In other words, if they request their mind to do something, the mind will listen to them. For those people, for example, when we request the mind, oh mind, please focus here, please concentrate here on the task at hand. And if the mind listens to you, then the first stream of abhyasas is for you. The first stream of abhyasas is samadhi yoga, or later scholars who have given commentaries on the Yoga Sutras, they also describe it as Raja Yoga. So these practices in samadhi yoga, Raja Yoga, are mainly inner practices. Practices that deal with the mind directly. And Patanjali gives a variety of practices for the mind in the first chapter. For example, one of the practices is the light of the mind. I mentioned the word Jyotishmati. So there is a practice around that. Vishokava Jyotishmati is a sutra. And that practice belongs to this type of Samadhi Yoga practice. It is an Abhyasa on Samadhi Yoga. So what does it mean? Vishokava Jyotishmati means always be aware of the mind as luminous. Just the awareness that the mind is bright or luminous, having that thought as the background thought, whatever we do, imagine the mind as a glow. That is a practice, that is an abhyasa. So that is an example of a practice that is given in Samadhi Yoga. The second stream of practices is called Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga means the yoga of action. In fact, the word Kriya means activity. So Kriya Yoga is the yoga of activity, or commonly translated as yoga of action. And it is very similar to Karma Yoga that is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, Kriya Yoga, according to sage Vyasa, who gave the very first commentary on the Yoga Sutras. So according to sage Vyasa, Kriya Yoga is for beginning students of yoga, novice practitioners of yoga, because for beginning students, it is easier to control the actions of the body than to control the thoughts of the mind. You see, we are better able to control our body than our mind, because the mind is so agitated. For most people, the mind is agitated, whereas it is easier to control the body. So begin from that level, from the activities of the body, disciplining the actions of the body. So that is what Kriya Yoga concerns itself with. And the third stream of abhyasas that Patanjali describes is called Ashtanga Yoga. This is perhaps one of the most famous teachings of Maharishi Patanjali. Ashtanga Yoga is the holistic practice of yoga that combines 8 limbs or 8 components in the practice of yoga. So these 8 limbs cover the full spectrum of our existence. Namely, there are practices for the body, there are practices for the breath, there are practices for the mind. There are practices also how to engage with the world. So there are 8 components of it. And in fact, the practice of asanas, the body postures, is a subset of Ashtanga Yoga. In fact, it is the third limb of the 8-limbed Ashtanga Yoga practice. So all these abhyasas, whatever stream that you pick, whether it is Samadhi Yoga or Kriya Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, the final objective is the same, namely tranquility of the mind. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. That is the absolute objective of yoga. Whatever we do in terms of our abhyasa should contribute to that, to serve that highest purpose. If we are doing asanas, ultimately it is for the purpose of quieting the mind. If we have other objectives like fringe benefits, for example, like, oh, I want to develop some muscles, or I want to lose weight, They're all worthy goals, yes, but the ultimate objective of yoga is to quiet the mind. It is to bring the mind to a space of tranquility. And when we read the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali, like a great scientist would do, he clearly presents the role and the function of each of these practices. For example, what is the role of asanas? Why do we do asanas when we are trying to quiet the mind? Asanas seem to be a practice for the body, but the objective of yoga is to quiet the mind. So, how does it fit in? So, Patanjali gives what are the benefits of asanas, what are the benefits of pranayama, how the two benefits are different, how asanas benefits and the pranayama benefits are different but complement each other. What is the role of pratyahara, another limb of the Ashtanga Yoga? And what is the benefit of dhyana, meditation? What is meditation? In fact, meditation is a very overloaded word, right? Many people have different ideas about what it is. Patanjali gives great clarity on this topic. What is meditation? He gives a very precise definition and how to allow the mind to be in that place of meditation. He leads us through a step-by-step process. So he gives the benefits for each of these angas, these limbs of the Ashtanga Yoga, and how they fit together so beautifully, and how they complement each other so beautifully, and finally, how they work in synergy. So when we combine these practices, these 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, magic happens, synergy happens. As they say, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. When we combine these different practices, what we gain as the benefits is much more than the sum of the individual benefits. Because by combining them, it is like saying, buy 2, get 1 free, right? So when we buy 8 of these limbs, or when we practice 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, we gain something which is much more than the mere sum of the benefits. There is a synergy that happens. So I'd like to conclude this session by saying, what are the ingredients of a high quality yoga practice? Because this is that time of the year where people make plans for New Year's resolution. So what is going to be my New Year's resolution? So making a list of bullet points. So many people also make New Year's resolution around health, discipline of any form of exercise, or perhaps yoga asanas and so forth. So just to give a taste of how Patanjali presents the teachings of yoga, here is an example of a sutra where he talks about the 4 ingredients of a high quality yoga practice. So let me walk you through this sutra. Let me chant the sutra. It says, Satu dirghakala nairantarya satkara sevito dridha bhumihi. What he says is, the high quality yoga practice, Abhyasa, has 4 ingredients. The first one is dirghakala. Dirghakala means the practice should be done for a long term. In other words, it's not just a weekend activity. It is an activity that we do on a regular basis for a long period of time, for several months, for several years, in fact, several decades. Long-term commitment to the practice of yoga. That is the first ingredient of a high quality yoga practice. They say the true benefits of yoga is in the long term. Of course, if we just do one session of yoga asanas perhaps, we do feel good. But in order to experience the true benefits of yoga, a long-term commitment to the practice is essential. So that is the first ingredient, long time, dirghakala. The second ingredient is nairantarya. Nairantarya means without a gap or without a break, without taking a holiday, doing the practice consistently every day. That is the second ingredient of a high quality yoga practice. The third ingredient is satkara. Satkara means doing the practice with a cheerful state of mind, with an attitude of gratitude, grateful for the teachers of yoga, that grateful for the tradition of yoga, all the masters in the yoga tradition, and doing the practice with a cheerful state of mind, with honor and respect. That is what satkara is. Not doing the practice with a complaining attitude. oh, I made this New Year's resolution. Now I have to drag my body into the yoga mat and drag the body kicking and screaming. No, that is not how we do the practice of yoga. Satkara means we enjoy the practice. We do it with a cheerful attitude. We wake up in the morning, that we look at the time, it is 4 a.m. and wow, it is time to practice yoga. So we jump into the yoga mat with a beaming smile and we do the practice of yoga. So that is Satkara, doing the practice with full enthusiasm. And then the fourth ingredient of a high quality yoga practice is asevito. Asevita means doing the practice with an attitude of service. We are serving the cells of the body. We are serving the instruments of the mind. We are serving the mind, the intellect, etc. Because this vehicle of the body has been serving us all along throughout our life here. So it is now the time to serve the vehicle, the body, serve the instruments, the mind, etc. So when we do the practice with this attitude of service, this will profoundly elevate the quality of experience. So the opposite of that would be to do the practice with a demand, with a sense of demand. Okay, I'm going to do this practice for the next 6 months. I better lose some weight, or I better achieve this posture. Not with that attitude, with a demand. No, we do it with an attitude of serving the body, serving the mind, and serving the society. Because when we present the best version of ourselves, the most healthy version of ourselves, most cheerful version of ourselves, not an angry version of ourselves, but a cheerful version, the highest version of ourselves, we are in fact serving the society. We are serving, we are giving a gift to everyone whose life we touch. You see, everyone who come into contact with, we give them the gift of the highest version of ourselves, not a complaining version of ourselves, but the highest, most cheerful version of ourselves. So these are the four ingredients of a high quality practice: Dirghakala, Nairantari, Satkara, and Asevito. And when this happens, when all these four ingredients are there, then the benefits of yoga become firmly grounded. Dridha bhumihi, Patanjali says. Dridha bhumihi literally means firmly grounded. So you see, Patanjali, in a very scientific manner, he enumerates, okay, these are the ingredients for the high quality yoga practice. Like that, when you see the Yoga Sutras, you see many examples where he enumerates things. For example, the 5 activities of the mind, the 5 vrittis of the mind, the 4 ingredients of a high quality practice, which we just saw, the 9 obstacles in the path of yoga, and the 5 signs and symptoms that we are stuck in an obstacle, the 9 methods to overcome obstacles in the path of yoga, the 3 components of Kriya Yoga, the 5 kleshas or the afflictions of the mind, 3 types of suffering, 8 limbs of the Ashtanga Yoga, the 3 superpowers of the mind. Patanjali talks about what are the 3 powers, the superpowers of the mind, and the 3 consequences of the law of karma. Like that, Patanjali seems to be a big fan of enumerating all these teachings of yoga so that it is very clearly presented, like we see in a scientific treatise. So all of these we will explore in great detail in the course. So if this interests you, if you find this fascinating, like I do, then I would invite you to this program the next semester, and we will learn all of these together in a very systematic way. So with this, I'll stop sharing the slides and hand it over to Ankurji.
Yes, great. Wonderful presentation. I think, the more you do it, the better it gets. And I've seen it a few times and I'm still always impressed. You will be impressed if you take this course with Shriramji. I've dropped the link in the chat. You can click the Yoga Sutras. We had in 45 minutes. Wow. Like so much information. Imagine the course, which will be once a week at 11 a.m. Eastern time to 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. The day of the week, I'll put that in there in a quick second, starting on January 15th. And we're glad to offer a $100 discount. So it will be $200. You get all of the HUA stuff, meaning the at hua.edu email address, access to the learning management system where links are shared, recordings of courses are up in case you miss one, you want to be there live and participate and ask the questions. But in case you miss it, that is a part of the functions we have. And yeah, so please do consider enrolling. Actually, I have a poll. I have actually a two-part question. So are you interested in enrolling in this course this quarter? Yes, no, maybe I have questions. And just a second question, I'm just kind of curious. Have you taken a course at HUA? And if you've taken a course with Shriramji or a different faculty, or you have not taken a course before, now we know that, and it's fine. If you've been on the webinars and that's how you want to participate and engage, we're happy to have you. But the courses are what make HUA HUA. And Shriramji, if you want to talk about how the course has progressed and evolved and the different courses you also offer, you know, we're trying to make it so that Hindu University of America is a platform for people like Shriramji who have something to share from a Hindu perspective with people who are interested. And, you know, for $200, you get a quarter-long course. We're trying to make it accessible and affordable. We have scholarships, especially if you're in Girmitya countries, Trinidad, Tobago, Mauritius, Bharat, we have a discount. We're trying to increase that availability of support to other folks who are interested in this. But right now, Shriramji, I'm just glad to have these webinars with you, and you as a part of Hindu University of America are bringing so much to it. Maybe if you want to talk about the course a little bit. I think some people did drop some questions in the Q&A box. I know some people are putting questions in the chat. Please put them in the Q&A box. It's easier to keep track of. But thank you so far. We have over 100 people join us and you're still with us. So thank you. Shriramji.
Yes, so regarding the actual flow of the course, the way we have designed the course is each session, there will be a very specific theme. And so during the 11 sessions of the course, each session, there will be a theme that will be our focal point. For example, the theme for the first session will be on the definition of yoga and definitions of some of the terms that Patanjali uses. Like I mentioned, chitta and what is vritti and so forth. We will look at some of the words that Patanjali uses very often in the Yoga Sutras. And then the second session, we will talk about Abhyasa, like what we saw today, the 4 ingredients of a high quality practice. And we will see the other component that we didn't see today, vairagya. Vairagya is dispassion. And how does Patanjali define vairagya? We will see that. And the third session will be on Ashtanga Yoga. And one of the sessions will be on Kriya Yoga, the yoga of action. Another session will be on Samadhi Yoga. And another session will be on the obstacles in the path of yoga, the 9 obstacles and how to overcome them. So each session will have a theme. And during that session, we will take up about 10 to 20 sutras and we will cover them in depth. So that is how we will unfold the course.
Great. So we've had about 45 out of 93 people fill out the survey, please. Just if you're not interested, just click it. It makes it easier for us. Just click it, try to find it. If you need to minimize the zoom and pop it up, it might come up if you can't see it. So let's, Shriramji, you ready for some questions? We're at 4:50. We have a few questions. Do you want me to read through them a little bit? So yeah, the discount, just sign up now. Don't worry about which midnight it is, just sign up now. That'll be the best way. But if you send us an email and you miss the deadline, we'll probably still do that. But please just sign up now, it makes it easier. And it's a Saturday, right? So it's gonna be kind of Saturday morning, depending on where you are in the world. And somebody's asking, what about the Sanskrit, the Pada and the Anvay?
Yes, some of the sutras we will go in depth in the Anvaya and how to split the words and so forth. And we will also use some of the definitions. For example, I mentioned that the words that Patanjali uses very often, we will understand them by looking at the definitions that scholars have given. For example, the word chitta, the definition of chitta that scholars have given. For example, Shankara defines chitta as chintana kartru chittam. that which manufactures thoughts is chitta. And there's another definition by another scholar, which is chiddiva bhavayati iti chittam. That means that which reflects the light of the consciousness is called a chitta. Like that, we will look at the definitions uh, based on the Sanskrit commentaries, and we will understand by looking at the word by word meaning and so forth. We will not do it for all the sutras because that will be a much longer program if we were to do it for all the 195 sutras. For the sutras that we select during the session, we will understand it deeply by looking at word by word and doing the anvaya as well.
Yep, great. The recording of this will be made accessible. You'll get it if you registered. If you haven't, just register and we'll send you the recording. Dharmaji, thank you. Are you going to cover all 195 sutras? No, you're not going to be able to. That's too much. Are you? How much are you going to cover?
Yes, we offered this course in the summer semester of this year, and we had a very enthusiastic response, and we covered around 80 to 90 sutras, so almost half the Yoga Sutras. There is a plan to offer a part 2 of this course as well. That will come in one of the future semesters, because we want enough people who have done this foundation program, the first part. Otherwise, when we look at the sutras from the 3rd and 4th chapter, for example, the 3rd chapter is on Vibhuti-pada, which is on supernatural powers, the powers that comes as a result of yoga. And in order to do justice for those sutras that come in the 3rd and 4th chapters, we need to first thoroughly understand, to study the first 2 chapters. Now, in this foundation program, we will look at some sutras from the 3rd and 4th chapter, but not all of them. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and maybe there was a little confusion. Somebody said the yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. Isn't that a course that you taught earlier? We have a different kind of angle on that. So, Hindu University of America has a lot of courses, and sometimes they get confusing if you want to talk a little bit more broadly about that, because that's interesting. The 2-part, knowing that you covered 80 to 90 sutras in 1 quarter and how we can bring it back. I think you're going to have a classroom of a Zoom window full of people doing this quarter after quarter. So yeah, just take a second to elaborate on that.
Yes, in fact, we have been offering alternately the yoga of the Yoga Sutras one semester, and the next semester yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. So we do this alternately, and both these texts, they really complement each other. In fact, there are many ideas that are presented in the Bhagavad Gita that Patanjali gives great clarity on that. I mentioned, for example, in today's presentation about the teachings on Abhyasa and vairagya. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihhyate. Same teaching is presented by Patanjali, and he gives examples of the Abhyasas. Abhyasa vairagyabhyam tannirodha. Like that, we will see commonalities. In fact, even in this program, Yoga of the Yoga Sutras, we will complement our understanding, we will complement our study with some verses from Bhagavad Gita whenever it is relevant. So if it helps us to deepen our understanding of the concepts, we will actually bring in shlokas from Bhagavad Gita as well.
Great. We also have a gift course. So if you've taken a course with Shriramji and you think it's something that somebody else should take, you can gift a course to somebody else. And I think I'm just dropping in the chat now, gift a course. So give this gift of yoga to someone if you already had the privilege. If not, you can gift it as a family gift. Get some other people to join you. Requisite and qualifications to practice and learn yoga. And then also, is this more of a theory course or a practice course? And we have other practice courses. This isn't exactly a practice course, but if you want to answer those two together.
Yes, so let me answer the second one first. As you pointed out, Ankurji, so this course, the focus will be on theory. And there are many HUA courses where the practical side of yoga is also explored. Now, having said that, during the course of the Yoga Sutras course, we will do some practices. In some sessions, we will have about 10 to 15 minutes of practice. For example, when we cover the topic of pranayama, we will actually do some breathing techniques. We will learn some breathing techniques. And so there is a small segment of practice as well. But the major focus will be on the theoretical side. And going back to the other question about the prerequisites or qualifications, actually the only prerequisite that I would say is, if this subject interests you, then it has qualified you to do this program. In fact, that's exactly what sage Vyasa says in his commentary to the Yoga Sutras. It's very interesting. He says, not everyone will be attracted to this practice and knowledge of yoga. So when somebody is not attracted to it, don't push them, Vyasa says in his commentary. So he talks about 5 types of people, and not all the types of people are attracted to this path or the knowledge and the practice of yoga. So if this subject interests you, then you're already qualified. You are welcome to do this program.
Yeah, and people are interested. We still have 86 people with us today and 14 questions open. Shriramji, is that all right if we go over 5 o'clock or which time zone are you in again? If we go over the hour and we take all the
Most
questions,
definitely.
yeah? Great.
Yes.
Dr. Srinivasa Rao is asking about ADHD. How does yoga maybe practice help, or what type is particularly helpful for that?
So when we talk about making yoga work for relieving specific conditions, or so this belongs to the chikitsa part of yoga, using yoga as a therapy. And there are ways, there are research that has been done, and there are programs that are offered, especially through Yoga Bharati. And I'm also a faculty with the Yoga Bharati, and they have a beautiful program on yoga therapy. So, because this is a very specialized topic, namely the how to tailor make the practice to address specific conditions or specific situations. So it belongs to that area, and I actually redirect your question to yoga therapy, people who are expert in yoga therapy, and I would highly encourage you to look up Yoga Bharati.
Great. Again, this is going to be on Saturdays. Saturdays, still Saturday night in India, right? But Saturday midday morning in America. So thank you, Gunaverji. Hopefully that works with your schedule and you can join. Assignments, homework, how is that going to work out? We have the learning management system where certain readings will be uploaded and you'll have easy access. You'll be able to click it, download it, use it. Shriramji, if you want to talk about the homeworks and assignments and how that plays in with our learning management system. We call it the LMS, and we have grades and all that stuff, even though Shriramji is not a tough grader. Don't worry about it.
So yes, we do have homework at the end of each session, and I usually make the homeworks enjoyable and fun, because I know that everyone is already super busy. So we don't want to add an additional stress. Yoga is supposed to be a stress reliever. So the homeworks that we have is mostly self-reflection, and usually it is about selecting 1 or 2 sutras that we covered during the session and contemplate about it and write your own personal reflections. So the homeworks are of this type. So what do you, the teachings of yoga or the teachings of that specific sutra, so what thoughts that bring to your mind when you contemplate about it? So just sharing your ideas around that sutra. So the homeworks will be of this type. And the last semester, we also had a final presentation where all the students, we had about, if I remember correctly, 28 students. And on the last session of the course, the students took turns and presented for 5 minutes. They will take up 1 or 2 sutras present it to the whole group. So we could have that as well. Depending on the class size, we could do a final presentation as well.
And it becomes it becomes a class. You have interactions, you talk things out through the course, and Shriramji will probably take your input and suggestions as a course as you move through it. So homework, yes, assignments, yes, but they'll be fun and they'll be useful, and it'll round out the whole experience of taking the course. And a lot of people were asking kind of on the coursework and Compass, so I think that was a good answer. Another person is asking the entire staff on this course. Shriramji, it's just going to be you, right? You might have a guest lecture here or there, or is it you taking all 11 sessions?
Yeah, I'll be conducting all the 11 sessions.
Great.
Course, yes.
Yeah, and so the text will be uploaded on the learning management system. Somebody asked that again. Oh, how does yoga, and would you discuss yoga's intersection with Advaita Vedanta?
That's an interesting question, and it is also a big Pandora's box. So let me briefly address that question. So when we talk about Advaita Vedanta, and especially the teachings of Shankara, and so from the tradition of the Advaita Vedantic interpretations of the Brahma Sutras and so forth. So as you know, in the Indian system of philosophy, there are six darshanas, Shad darshanas it is called, six darshanas, six different perspectives to understand the nature of the self and understand the nature of the universe. So yoga is one of the darshanas, and the foundational text of the Yoga Darshana is the Yoga Sutras. And the foundational text for Advaita Vedanta, in fact Vedanta in general, is Brahma Sutras. Now, of the six darshanas, three of them, namely Sankhya, Yoga, and Vedanta, these three are called Nivritti Shastras. Nivritti Shastras means they are inner science. In other words, it's contemplative science. It inquires into the nature of the self, not just the nature of the world and the universe, but inquires into the nature of the self. It is a more contemplative or introspective practices. So when we look at these three, Sankhya, Yoga, and Vedanta, yoga is actually built up on the foundation of Sankhya. Yoga is built on the foundation of Sankhya Yoga. And Vedanta, like Advaita Vedanta, there are some differences, different perspectives that Advaita Vedanta scholars bring that may differ from what Patanjali presents in his Yoga Sutras. But interestingly, many scholars, many sages in the Advaita Vedanta tradition have also given commentaries on the Yoga Sutras. For example, Shankara himself has given a commentary on the Yoga Sutras. In fact, it's a commentary on the commentary of Vyasas on Yoga Sutras. It's a two-level commentary. So there you will see the nice interplay between the Advaita Vedanta and the topic of yoga as presented by Patanjali. In fact, at its core, the Patanjali's presentation on yoga is actually Dvaitic, in the sense that he makes a very clear distinction between the Prakriti and the Purusha, and he also asserts the reality of the Prakriti. He doesn't call it Maya. So it's not just an appearance, but there is a inherent reality to it. That's a very high level or a very cursory attempt to talk about how Advaita Vedanta and yoga are related. But in fact, a little bit deeper, we will explore this also in the during the course. And in the last semester, when this course was offered, there were a lot of interesting questions around this topic and also a lively discussion that we had. So definitely we will explore a little bit more during the course.
Definitely a high level answer and conversation. Very good, very good. So the gift course, I don't think that'll include the discount. The way that we set it up, the gift course is just a regular gift course code. I can see about that. But if you're going to enroll in the course for Yoga of the Yoga Sutras with Dr. Shriramji, the $200 discount will be available for a couple more days until the 14th. So please do consider that. We've got 56 out of 75 people filling out the little poll. Please take a second and fill that out. Somebody else has asked about changing the time and the date. I don't think that's really feasible, Shriramji, but if you have questions on the exact details, you can click that button that says maybe I have questions. Yeah, you know, quarter to quarter, we use the time in the schedule and try to pick one that works. And I think there was a lot of back and forth before we settle on this. So sorry if it does not work out for your schedule. We'll offer or a different version in the next sequence. And there's a lot of courses at HUA that you can take a look at if it doesn't fit your schedule. Sorry about that.
Also,
yeah,
Ankurji, I see that there are a lot of participants who have actually done the program, the Yoga of the Yoga Sutras or the Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. Perhaps perhaps we could request a couple of them to say a few words about the course so that they can share
tell
their
me
experience. Jairamji, would you like to share a few words about the Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita course that you're doing this semester?
Jairamji. How does his name come up? Not with a J.
Or maybe he has already logged off. Let me see. Anybody else who can raise their hand?
Yeah, you can raise your hand, put in the chat. I'm trying to pay attention to everything, but yeah, there you go. I see a hand raised from Vaibhavji. Yeah?
Yes.
All right,
Vaibhav.
let's have Vaibhav. How do we make you a panelist? It's quicker if I just let you talk that way, but if we make them a panelist, they got to come this way. Pushpaji, I can just allow you to talk and you'd be ready to go. Yeah? Pushpaji, you can unmute yourself now. Yeah.
Hi, actually, this is Malik. I'm her husband.
Oh, okay.
So I did attend the last session. I can tell you, anybody who is interested, they will not be disappointed. It's really awesome. I'll just give you one example how good it was. The session was supposed to be for 1 hour, and I think if I'm not wrong, we were easily there for at least 2 hours and nobody left because the time was running out. We had to just close the session. Honestly, there was so much of traction and we really thoroughly enjoyed it. And in fact, we were asking as to when the next session will start. So for everyone who is on the borderline trying to think whether it's good or not, it's not good. It's very good. It's a life-changing experience. I really enjoyed it, and Dr. Shriramji is a great teacher, very easy to understand. His analogies are great, and it's really nice. I cannot express more.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Malikji.
Namaste.
Okay. And now Vaibhavji is a panelist. You can share if you want to. Also, you can probably turn on your camera. And if you want to tell me if you also have your hand up, if you'd rather come on just audio or video also, you can just let me know and I can do that.
I don't have a video right now set up,
yeah.
But I can just speak for Shriramji. So I have enrolled in the Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. I'm currently enrolled with Shriramji this semester. And I can confidently say that he is one of the most comprehensive and excellent teachers whom I have come across, who is both at a high level on the professional front and also on the ancient Vedic sciences perspective. And the teachings he has imbibed, it clearly, and the way he teaches it clearly reflects that he's actually practicing those principles in his own life. And all those teachings are coming from his heart and all his realizations based on his practice. So that clearly is reflected in this teaching. And I'm sure this particular course, Yoga of the Yoga Sutras, will have the same flavor, and it will be highly enlightening for anyone who is planning to enroll, and highly beneficial to them. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. I don't see any other hands or chats. We still have some questions in the Q&A box. It is on Saturday, right? Somebody's asking, I don't know why you would think it was on a Wednesday. January 15th is the first day of the course, and that's the Saturday. Shriramji?
Yes, we are meeting on Saturday mornings, 8 a.m. Pacific time, which is 11 a.m. Eastern time. That's when we begin the session. Yes.
Yeah. So Sushil Patel is asking, oh, well, any other student testimonials? Anybody else want to jump on board? We can come back to you, let us know. Sushil Patel is asking about supernatural powers. You kind of touched on it, right? The Puranas have different stories, but what is the potential of diving deep into yoga?
So when we read the third chapter of the Yoga Sutras, the third chapter is titled Vibhuti-pada, the chapter on powers. And we have a very similar teachings in the Bhagavad Gita as well. The 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is on Vibhuti Yoga. So when we read the Vibhuti, the Siddhis or the Vibhutis presented either in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Yoga Sutras, what we discover is that we are perhaps using a very tiny fraction of our full potential. We become aware of what are the great qualities or the powers that we can harness with our mind. And Patanjali gives us a glimpse of that. So by doing these yoga sadhanas, remember I mentioned there are 3 superpowers of the mind, and Patanjali describes them. And when we use them in various endeavors, when we give the full power of the mind into whatever endeavor we are doing, then what we do is we demonstrate excellence. So we can think of vibhutis as excelling in what we are doing. And that excellence presents itself in various ways. And Patanjali, of course, he gives specific examples, and some of the examples could seem a little bit esoteric. For example, he talks about the body becomes so light that they can lift the body against gravity, some kind of a levitation. So this might appear to be a little esoteric, and perhaps it is, because we have, in our day-to-day life, we don't see such examples. But it does open our mind to the possibility that, oh, perhaps our mind is much more powerful than what we think it to be, and how we can harness these powers of the mind. At least the question, that curiosity has been invoked in our mind. So perhaps that is one benefit of reading these vibhutis, reading about the Vibhuti-pada.
Wonderful. Looks like we have, 6 people who registered just today. Srinivasaraji, Deepaliji, Girishji, Sarah, and Uma, and Pushpaji. Thank you all for registering already. If you haven't done that, please do. And so again, the recording will be available to listen. Right now, we're figuring out how long you will have it after the quarter ends. We can't allow everyone to have access to everything forever. Just the capacity issues would not allow it, but we are trying to make sure things are accessible through the quarter and a little bit after, in case you want to review. Again, another question on the timing thing. I think we're okay with that. In the future, yep. Wednesdays. Sure about that. Sorry, going through the questions. Before taking the course, we'll send you, some written material. We'll send you the email. You can look through the course, kind of outline, and we can have a call and ask your questions before you enroll. We'll probably be sending out that email with the recording of this webinar tomorrow or 36 hours, depending on how long it takes. Yeah, so going through some more of these questions. What is the name of the text in which Adi Shankarya commented upon the commentary by Vyasa? That was really interesting to me, the 2 layers of commentary and really the value adding and the building. That's what we are trying to do with Hindu University of America. We're trying to be original, but also recognizing there is so much that so many thoughtful, intelligent, capable people Hindus have done work on. And that was cool to hear about. Yeah, if you want to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes. So there is one English translation of Shankara's commentary, which is a commentary on Vyasa's commentary of the Yoga Sutras. And if I remember correctly, the author's name is Trevor Leggett. So let me just quickly find the book on the web, and I will write it on the chat box so that it's available on the chat.
Yeah, and the PDF for Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, I mean, that's available. I think somebody actually dropped a link to one version in the chat already, but you'll have access to the reading material through the learning management system, and we'll make it easy, click, accessible. Don't worry about that if you enroll. Yeah, so what do you, there's more timing questions, trying to get rid of these questions. Yes. What are you feeling, Shriramji? Anything else in the chat that you want to pick up on, or are we on closing thoughts and statements other than encouraging you all to enroll? Let me drop it in the chat one more time.
So I see that quite a few questions around the actual text that we will be using in the during the course. So don't worry, the PDF of the text will be shared before we begin the course. It will be available to everyone who has registered. And all the slides that I'll be preparing to present on for each of the sessions, the slides are also made available at the end of the session. The PDF file containing all the slides will be available to you as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you for answering that. If you register and then the quarter changes and something happens and you got to drop, yeah, you can drop, and we can either give you a refund minus fees, or we can hold your registration for a future course in another quarter, and another time that works out for you. So we try to be flexible. We know things change, and please do consider. I'm sure if you're in the first session, you're gonna want to keep going, but yeah, if something happens in your own life and you can't stay enrolled, we will try to work with you, Balaji, so that's not a problem there. Yeah, so those textbook questions, right? Great. Okay, Shriramji, that was great. I'm glad that we have, do we have anybody else registering? We had 6 people already during this webinar or today. Wonderful to see that. You have 12 people already enrolled, 13, one more person just enrolled, perfect. Hopefully we can get you, past 25 or so is really a good, I think, number, right? But let your friends know this is going to be, as students said, life-changing. And I'm, again, just glad that Dr. Shriram Sarvatham is partnering with HUA to bring this course to you. Shriramji, you want to close out?
Thank you so much, Ankurji. And also, I just posted the link to the book, the Shankara's commentary, which is a double level commentary. So somebody asked this question. So I gave a link. You can look up that book, and I highly recommend this book if such a detailed and thorough exposition of the Yoga Sutras interests you. So thank you all for joining. I know that joining the webinar, especially on a Sunday afternoon, so it requires a lot of enthusiasm and commitment and interest in this topic. So thank you for taking this time to be in this webinar, and I hope to see you during the course. And thanks also to Ankurji for beautifully guiding the whole process and the presentations and the flow of the webinar. Thank you all so much.
Great. Dhanyavad, thank you. Appreciate that, Shriramji. And everyone, have a good rest of your Sunday. Bye-bye.